Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our extra special meeting of Land Down Under Hangout. So this month we are doing Once and Future Witches. That was my pick. I'm going to start off with how I felt about it because I want to, and it's my pick and I can do what I want. So I really enjoyed the book. I found that it took a little bit to get into, and I don't know if that's just because of where I was when I started reading / listening to it, because I did do a bit of both. But I didn't really gel with the characters till a good third of the way through the book. Like, to start off with, I just didn't really care about them. Like, we just kind of got thrown in, and it took me a good third to get into the book. But by the time I finished the book, I was like, I love these characters. And now I'm looking at another book written by the same author because I'm like, I really loved her writing style. So yes. Elizabeth.
I have to agree. Like, it took a little while for me to warm up to the characters. Definitely. I found it was a good book for taking the familiar and making it different, and generally more feminist, which was pretty cool. I loved the language. But on the whole, I actually like the author's other book, The 10,000 Doors of January, better. I felt that had more whimsy to it. But on the whole, interesting read.
Mel.
I don't know if it was my mood, but I didn't really enjoy this as a read. It wasn't a bad book by any means, and this is why I think maybe it might have been my mood. And if I had, I actually think one of my biggest problems was listening to it in the audiobook format. I found the narrator very dour, and I just constantly felt miserable listening to her, and I couldn't connect with the characters. Unlike you guys, I never actually got the connection. I just was so I was just not enjoying myself. And but I could see so many things that she was trying to do, and there was elements that I was like, this would be really good if I just wasn't so goddamn miserable all the time. So I think that perhaps it might have been better if I'd read the physical book and I didn't have someone's voice making me feel miserable. It might have helped to improve my feel. But that would take a second reading, and I'm not sure if that'll happen. That's a maybe on that. I agree, Elizabeth. I liked the 10,000 Doors of January much better.
I know what you mean, and I think it helped that I was doing a combination of both. Like, I read the physical copy, or not the physical copy, the digital copy, and I listened to it, and I think that helped.
Yeah, and I should also say I was reading the ebook, so I wasn't listening to the audio at all.
And I do agree that the narrator was a very dour sounding person.
Whether it was deliberate or whether that's just how she sounds, I don't know, but I was just like, God, woman, like, life is just death. Why do we live?
And it's not a cheery book either. Like,
it's not.
Yeah.
Captain, before we start getting too far off track, what did you think?
I quite liked it. I would agree that I preferred the 10,000 Doors of January because it was a much lighter toned book. This was quite a dark toned book, and I normally don't enjoy that, and that might be part of the reason why you had trouble with it, Mel, because it did feel a lot like every time it was getting hopeful, something else terrible happened, and I was like, oh. So I actually quite enjoyed the narrator. I thought the narrator did a good job of conveying the kind of mood of the book. And I'm the same. It took me a little bit to get into it, but then once I got into it, I was like really into it. I did it I wasn't keeping track of the time, and at one point I thought, oh, we must be nearly the end, and then it was like we were only halfway through, and it was like, oh my God.
Yeah, it was a bit long, I would say.
I think when they found the tower, I kind of thought that was going to be the end, and then that wasn't the end, and it was like more bad things happened, and another bad thing happened. But I did enjoy the characters. I did enjoy the story. I was like listening to it in times when, like, I can tell when I enjoy a book, especially when it's audio, if I'm like putting on the audiobook during things that I wouldn't normally bother with it. So like I'd usually listen to my audiobooks when I'm getting ready for work in the morning and when I'm driving to and from work. If I'm going, oh, well, I just might not turn the TV on tonight and I'll sit and listen to my audiobook and crochet, I know that it's a good book because it's making me want to do that, and which I did do that with this book. So, yeah, I did enjoy it, but I was also, it made me angry on behalf of the characters and just on behalf of women throughout history, because so many things in it were maybe not exactly what happened in history, but pretty damn close. And it just kind of made my blood boil a little bit. So I don't know if enjoy is the right word, but I wanted to keep reading. So, and I enjoyed the language in it too. But yes, that's me.
Unlike the three of you guys, I haven't actually read 10,000 Days of January. I didn't actually realize that was by, I've heard of the book. I didn't realize it was written by the same author.
I didn't know that either, even until you guys just said it. And I was like, oh, is this the same author? Even though I've read that book, I didn't know.
This is her second book out.
Yeah, I've actually been eyeing off her next book, which is The Splintered Spindle, I think it's called, or Spindle Splintered. It looks interesting. I don't know if it's going to be a similar tone to this or more like the first one, but it looks interesting. But when I did pick this book, I didn't realize it was going to be, like, I realized it was going to be a bit darker, but I didn't realize it was going to be so dark.
So dark.
And it was, it was a very heavy book. So I was interspersing this book with A Touch of Darkness, which is my Hades and Persephone book, because I was like, I need something that's not so heavy, because I can't do this all the time. Like, sometimes I just want something that's going to make me smile. And while the story was very, very good, it was very heavy.
I agree with that. I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more if I had a lot of work on when I was reading it. And so I just didn't have time to read anything other than this if I was going to get it done in time. And I just was not looking forward to it. I was not wanting to, and I was forcing myself through it most of the time. I did a bit of skipping even to just sort of get myself through it, because I was just like, it's not happening. Okay, let's just move forward. I actually found it interesting, and it's something I want to talk about. I really think she is very big on descriptions that are not very necessary. She described so much stuff. And I find it fascinating how annoyed I would get with it compared to the current book I'm reading, which also describes an awful lot of stuff that's not necessary. And I love every single word of it, and I don't want them to stop. So, but the difference is that book's making me happy and this book didn't. And I'm wondering if that's the difference. Like, I don't mind descriptions, but descriptive books in books that are making me feel miserable are perhaps not very good for me.
Yeah. What did we
just
all
prolonged
think?
suffering, really. So that's understandable.
What did we all think about how magic worked in this universe? So magic was just built on words, using things. Like, it's all the nursery rhymes that we know from when we were kids and that sort of stuff. Like, I thought that was a really clever way to sort of tie the magic into our world without it being like just using sort of those sorts of things. Like, it was an interesting way to tie those sorts of things in and sort of ground it in the real world without having it be too just a history novel.
Sorry,
actually, that was one of the things I enjoyed about the narrator, is those little snippets at the beginning of each chapter where she would read the nursery rhyme and then explain the spell. I don't know what it was about it, but the way she sort of did that was really nice. And I liked the idea that the women had to hide the spells in these things, because men would be like, oh, well, we're not going to pay attention to that because that's just a nursery rhyme. And it was this like really clever way of continuing on this tradition without getting caught, kind of thing. I liked that idea.
Yeah, it was a very like feminine way of designing the magic.
And then hiding words in like sewing kits and those sorts of stuff as well. It was a very clever way that she made the magic happen in that universe, and sort of how it was still hidden but still something that was realistic.
Yeah, it felt very grounded in our world. Like, you felt like this would be exactly the kind of thing that could have come from what we have as magic in our world, sort of thing.
Yes.
But
yeah.
I also particularly like the fact that she had recognition of the fact that different cultures would have different types of magic and things.
Yes. Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah,
even
like
within the same city.
yeah, like them talking to Cleo and her family about the magic that they used and how different it sort of was functionally, but still got to the same ends, which was being able to get your will through or get your will action.
And they made some really good points about race and about women's rights, and that coloured women's rights were, they were still fighting for rights that white women had, and she kind of made that point of like, you're trying to fight for this and we're still trying to get the rights that you already have yourself, And I thought there was lots of little parallels to our world that like, yeah, that was really good. Somebody else
also the mothers' names. I liked the mothers' names.
Yes,
yeah.
I liked that too.
How they were all like plants and things.
And I liked the idea of like this one part of the name being something that was passed down from your mother, and that it was kind of a secret, like you didn't really share your mother's name, that middle name that was given to you by your mother with everybody. That was a really nice idea.
Although I found Juniper's really interesting because her first name is James after her brother. But also her father's an alcoholic, and Juniper is the source of gin. So I just found that really interesting. I think I was thinking about it because Bella's middle name caught me first. I'm like, Belladonna, are they all like after poisons and things? I'm like, oh no, that can't be right, because Juniper you can make gin out of, so that's probably not.
What was the other one? I forget.
Amaranth.
Amaranth.
Amaranth. Oh yeah, and that's not poisonous either.
I don't think so.
No, because I've got some in my garden. You can eat it. I will be back. I have to go and say goodnight to kids. Sorry.
Can I just go back to the magic for a minute? I really liked the fact that even though they had all of these passed on spells that were these shortcuts for things that you could do, but there was also that acknowledgement of the fact that they could build and make their own. It's just that it was a little bit harder and a little bit more work to figure those sorts of things out. So I really liked that as well.
Mm-hmm. In fact, the dialogue about like who can do magic, I thought was really interesting and reminded me a lot of the sort of commentary that was going on around the new Star Wars movies and Rey's background. And that, like, many people were hoping that she was just an ordinary nobody sort of thing, and that she wasn't from like a particular bloodline. And I liked that is what played out here. That it wasn't that they were, especially from an especially witchy family or anything like that. It was just that, they had the will.
And the whole prophecy part and things like that was nothing. It was just them reading into it themselves when it wasn't that at all. So
yeah, like I loved the fact that like when they went and met the first three weren't even the first three, and they said that everyone has a little bit of the maiden, the mother, and the crone in them. It's not that you are only one of those things. It's just that one of those traits will probably be your primary trait.
It was kind of a bit like, sorry, Naomi, go ahead.
I was going to say it's more that you have to have the will and the words to make the magic happen, not so much that you need to have three of you that have the will and the words, not so much that you needed to have a mother, a crone, and a maiden. Like you didn't have to have those three specific things. Like
it was also pushing pretty hard to call Bella a crone.
Yeah, I was going to say like Bella isn't even the oldest. Amaranth is, so like calling her the crone.
Bella is the oldest.
Is she? I thought Amaranth was. I'm sorry.
No.
But still, like none of them are like. It's not like they're not like, from what I could understand, like she would be late 20s, early 30s.
At most.
At most, like from the description of their ages, like I would have thought Juniper was
I think it was about
17,
7 age
18?
difference.
She said 17.
17?
Yeah, so she was 17, and I think there was around about a 7-year age gap.
Okay, so younger.
So
yeah,
max
like
10, max 10. So I reckon max 27.
yeah, but still, like I would not call 27 a crone.
No, no.
What would that make me?
Well, like again, that's more about like the life that she's lived rather than that she is old. Like I don't think that crondom is necessarily tied to age, although it generally
I reckon the only reason that there was happening though, and I don't like it, is because she was a lesbian and her chances of having a child under those circumstances were lowered. I reckon if she hadn't been a lesbian, it wouldn't have even been considered, because she could have still had if she had her romance still, she still would have been seen as going to have a baby at some point. That's given true, the circumstances and the time. I think it was the lesbian thing that gave her the crone, and I was like really kind of cranky about that. Sorry.
I think it was also her personality. She was very reserved and quiet, and she was the wise one. She was the one that, you know, she wasn't the impulsive one. She wasn't, you know, she kind of had some traits that were more, you know, like an older, wiser person might have. And I thought
she wanted to think everything through first and like make her decision based on facts, not sort of like, okay, no, this is what we're going to do. She was the
cautious one.
Yeah.
So maybe that was part of it as well, not necessarily the physical becoming a mother thing. I think it was more about
I mean,
and the mother also.
Like, I still think Mel's point stands. Like, she could have still had those traits, and like, if she hadn't been a lesbian, still expected to, you know, have a kid.
Well, I also feel like a lot of the mothering instincts, like very much Agnes was sort of shown as fighting her mothering instincts, especially in those earlier stages, for mothering all of the people around her, right? Like her instinct was to try and help, and to, you know, and she was deliberately fighting against that part of herself. And I was like, is that just because she's like, when she got pregnant, I was like, is all of that just because she's the one who got pregnant? Like,
no, because in the beginning, when the mother died, the girl that she said take care of your sisters to was the middle one. It was the one, it wasn't the oldest. And they pointed out that the mother had said to her to take care of her sisters because she knew she was the one that would look after them, and even though she wasn't the oldest.
Yeah,
so it wasn't,
she was the strong one, so that was why she was.
So I just felt like a lot of that kind of storytelling part building came from the fact that she was the one that was going to be the mother in the figures, and anyway, I wasn't too fussed on the labeling that came from it, basically.
I mean, it was nice that in the end it was nicely played out that everyone has a bit of everything in them. You're never just one of those things.
Yes. I liked the way that sort of fixed it, because I was very cranky about it before that.
Well, I mean, the maiden, mother, and the crone, like, archetypes are quite problematic, because like it's just biological determinism, really.
It's the same as the you know, the whore and the Madonna thing. You know, it's putting women into you're these roles or you're not, you know, if you're not this role, you're this role. You know, if you're not a mother and you're not a maiden anymore, then you must be a spinster and a crone, and therefore not valued as much.
I just have a problem with the idea that someone can't be mothering to others around them without actually having a child. As a person who doesn't have a child but is very good at mothering.
You're definitely the mum of our group, Mel.
It's exactly the kind of thing that I mean, right? Like, I do all of those things. I don't need to have a baby to be able to have those skill sets. And so, yeah.
I appreciated that there was a trans character included in amongst the cast.
That was like a really nice surprise at the end of the book. Like, I wasn't expecting that to be sort of her secret. Like, So
Oh,
you could tell throughout the book that she had something going on that wasn't being said. And then like when it got to that point where she was sort of having that quiet moment with Juniper, and that was what was sort of like her truth, I was like, oh, well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Not what I was expecting, but cool.
I was expecting her to be a traitor because
like at the very beginning, I was like, I don't trust you, Phyllis. Sounds sketchy, I don't like it. And then like, and I like that they didn't make that the whole point of her being in the story.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't you're the trans character, so you just do whatever the trans character has to do, and that's it. That's your point of being in this story. And I did enjoy that. Like that her whole point in the story wasn't just to be a trans character.
I think she's challenging a lot in the book. She's trying to put in a lot of representation, and like we said with female, the view of females and things. A lot of things were being challenged with that. This is why I'm like, I wanted to like this book so much. There's so much going on in it that I should really be loving.
It's just that it was a hard read in some ways because it was like the things that were happening to the characters were really hard to read. It was really hard to read for me, the parts where Juniper was in the prison. It was really hard to read the parts when, what's her name, the middle one? What's her name? Agnes, when she went into labour and they took her to that hospital and drugged her and stuff. And I was like, that really was very hard to read. And then, you know.
I think the biggest problem for me too was that it all felt very hopeless. Like this could not possibly.
There wasn't enough light points in the book. Like there wasn't a lot of levity in the book to make you feel like there was some sort of hope in there.
No, also, but it just didn't feel like we were going to end up in a resolved space, like in that it was going to actually be okay and good at the end. And it wasn't. No. It was, they were working towards it, but that was exactly the thing. I was like, this is too big of a systemic problem to fix in this. It is not going to actually be quote unquote happily ever after story at the end of any kind.
So I have two thoughts here. One is that there was actually too much going on in the story, and that the author didn't have a firm enough grasp on what was important in the story. So it meandered too long. There weren't enough light points, and I had issues with the ending, the ending, because it's a cop out. It's a cop out.
Was this the bit that happened to Juniper?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I felt like it's trying to have your cake and eat it too. Like it's.
Well, I was like, is she dead or not? Because she's dead, but she's still there. And I'm like, what are you trying to do here?
Yeah. Like, it wasn't. I didn't find it fulfilling.
Yeah,
I didn't feel like it was sufficiently foreshadowed. Go ahead, Naomi.
So I was just going to say, they made her dead like the three are dead because they learned the spell, because they needed to learn how to undo the spell. But like, I still felt like, I feel like that when they described it, you had to have a lot of intent to be able to do that. And it felt like that kind of just happened. Like Juniper was like struggling to be able to basically kill herself so that she could kill Gideon. Is that his name? God damn it.
Gideon, yeah.
Is Gideon. So she could kill Gideon. I didn't feel like there was enough will for her to also be able to do this other very complicated sounding spell.
Yes, I agree.
I was like, how did she, but I don't understand did I miss something? Like, did I zone out and just miss something? But obviously I didn't, because you guys also feel like it just kind of happened.
It just kind of happened. And then I was also sort of like, I wasn't even thinking about the other three. I was just sort of like, if she was just haunting and they were just visiting her, I would be okay. But no, she's a really active part of what they're doing, and with hosting and housing all of their, I'm going to call them the refugees, their female refugees. And I'm like, what? Is it a death or not?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I suppose she did say that she only feels comfortable in the tower, like she can't stray far from the tower. She finds herself pulled too thin. And the tower is what they called in the between or in nowhere. Like it's not really in the world as such. You have to use magic to get there. So I kind of get what they like. I get how she could be there, but also I don't understand how she can be so real there that she could be taking care of the baby. Like,
yeah,
like
that's exactly what I mean. Like it was like there was no real change because it gave her everything she wanted anyway. She got to live on her mountain. She got to be reclusive, except for the few people she chose to interact with. I was just like, this. It didn't have the payoff, and I was like, wasn't there a better way to have Gideon die off than having to do that particular step? If you,
I mean, if you're going to do it, pay the cost and do it properly.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. How did you guys feel about the reveal about Gideon being Hansel from Hansel and Gretel? Did you see it coming? Because I didn't. I did towards the end when they started hinting about it, but not until right when they were really spelling it out.
I guessed it would be something like that because he talked about his sister being taken in by the witch in the forest, but there are a number of children that get taken in by a witch in the forest. It's not necessarily just Hansel and Gretel, sorry. So that kind of it felt like it was something that was shoehorned in.
I liked the idea though that the twist on the story that it wasn't that, the kids pushed the witch in the fire and stuff, that the witch actually took Gretel under her wing and started teaching her witchcraft and stuff, and he was just pissed off because he felt not included in that. And I liked that twist on that fairy tale. I thought, I kind of want to read that story, like how there's twisted fairy tale books. I'm like, I'd like to see a twisted fairy tale book about Gretel learning from the witch how to be a witch. And
yes,
but he was taught too, like.
Well, yeah, because he knows all the witchcraft, but I knew he was just very bitter and he was emotionally traumatized by his parents, really, which not very surprising considering.
Yeah.
I just felt like he was a very unstable person.
Yeah.
But also kind of, I found like he's a bit of a non-entity for a lot of the book, which is fine. It means that like the systemic problems get to be foregrounded more. Yeah. But yeah, and then they bring him forward anyway. I don't know how I feel about it, to be honest. I just feel like it was that kind of the same like problem with the meandering and the shifting.
There was a lot of stuff that just felt very shoehorned in. Like I feel like she wanted to put a lot of stuff in this book, but because she had decided that this was going to be a single book story, it wasn't going to be a duology or anything like that. She just jammed a lot into a single story that didn't tell the story quickly. She kind of meandered through it. So there was just lots of stuff in there that didn't really give you anything.
She does seem to be aiming for single stories. Like that seems to be her thing.
Yeah. I mean, which is absolutely fine. But it was also just that she kind of tried to put a lot of like fairy tale, nursery rhymes, all that sort of stuff in there with the magic, but also just I don't know, it just felt very
it's interesting in that sense to compare this to the $10,000 of January. And apologies, Naomi, I know you haven't read it, but the $10,000 of January is not exactly a linear story either, but the structure of it serves the kind of story that it is. Yeah. Whereas this one just has the feeling like it's trying to do too much and it doesn't know where it's going.
Yeah. I was going to bring up the dog, Gideon's dog. I thought that I was going to turn out to be a witch that he'd captured and put a collar on and turned into a dog, because he kept talking about how the dog had this iron collar on. And I was like, I was so expecting that to turn out to be either a witch that he'd turn into a dog or something other than a dog, but it's more just that it was his familiar, and was that I was kind of hoping for something more interesting with that story, and I was kind of hoping at the end that the dog would turn on him and help them.
I kept waiting for it.
So, because the dog obviously didn't want to be around him, you know, and wasn't there by choice, and I kept thinking, oh, the dog's going to save them. The dog's going to turn on its master, and it's going to turn out to be, you know, something more than what it is.
I was just like, just release the freaking dog. He'll take care of him.
although having it be a wolf was a good twist and plays into that whole like fairy tale element, which was nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was kind of weird about the collar, because like it seemed like it was implied that it was a similar kind of collar to the ones that they put on witches, which suppresses magic. But you'd think that if that was the case, and he was suppressing the magic of his familiar, that he would be less powerful with his magic, which didn't seem to be the case. Like it wasn't quite, didn't make logical sense.
No,
Yeah.
the way of containing him, the way it would work on witches didn't seem to be the same. So what was happening?
Yeah, there was one point where I was like, take the collar off the dog.
Yeah.
At one point I thought that the dog was the bad guy and it was the witch controlling the man of Gideon Hall, like right when they first sort of introduced him. I was like, is the dog the bad guy? Is that where we're going with this? There was just a lot, and yeah.
Well, like I thought that he was like possessed by a demon or something, which he kind of was.
Yeah.
But, like also
Or something, yeah.
Yeah.
I liked the plot line with the woman who was the leader of the conservative group, whatever they were called again.
You mean
Bible
Miss
bashing
Wiggin?
ones.
I can't think of her first name, but Miss Wiggin,
Yeah,
who was the adopted daughter of Gideon.
yeah, that one. And I was like, I liked the fact that she was the one that ended up being the one to get rid of him. Well, even though he wasn't really dead, but like,
Yeah. She felt more empowered at the end of it all.
In kind of the same way as The Handmaid's Tale, where they're showing that even these women that are kind of the ones that are seen as the ones that are being virtuous, and the, you know, like the wives role in Handmaid's Tale, they're also oppressed and they're also victims of this system, even though they're kind of the perpetrators of some of the evils. They're not entirely, they're partly victims themselves as well of this system. I mean, in her case, she was like possessed or whatever, or could be controlled by him. But I liked that she was the one that ended up turning on him.
And that was nicely played too, because like it took her a little bit like to realize what was going on, and she'd be like, "Oh, you," sort of thing. And that was a nice moment to watch. I thought that was well handled.
Yeah. The only thing I disliked about it was that I was enjoying the fact that she was showing, when it came to the feminist movement and all of that, she was showing the other side, these females who were fighting back against it and moralistic about it all and all that sort of stuff, and that kind of took that away. But I was like, who cares? Enjoyed it too much.
I mean, I see what you're saying, because she was the key figure there, and you didn't really get to see the others, who are presumably, you know, not possessed or being controlled, and that's
exactly. But they could have. But see, the thing is, we know from the shadows that people were being controlled, and people close to her were probably more likely to have been more controlled than just the bit that he was doing with the crowds now and then. And so it sort of just took that little bit of element away that I was enjoying of the full spectrum of female representation that was going on in the book and things along those lines. But I don't think it was a true detriment. It was just I was enjoying the fact that you were doing it all there, but okay. But I enjoyed her getting her own back, so it was like, it's all good.
Yeah.
And I like that when, I think it was Juniper, came out of the tower and she ran into her, Miss Wiggin, like and she was standing in the square, like looking at the tower or whatever, and she seemed a bit more herself. Like she didn't scream for alarm. She didn't, race after her or anything like that. She seemed more of herself. And while she didn't support what Juniper was doing, she also was like, I can see where you're coming from with the, wanting to have rights. Like
she was tempted, I think.
Yes, like she seemed like she was not being as controlled, and I don't know if that's just because she was by herself and he had other things he was doing that he kind of like wasn't concentrating on her.
Yeah.
But it was nice to see like that little glimpse of not a simpering little girl.
Yeah.
Which made you sort of realize that something was going on with her and she wasn't totally like that.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping to turn at that point, and then she went, and then she was like, I was disappointed because I was hoping she would come over to their side, but she didn't.
I mean, she at least did kill him, so
points for that, for sure. I was thinking about also, I found the sisters, like bits of the sisters, quite relatable in a way. So, for example, Juniper reminds me a bit of my sister and her hot-headedness sometimes and that sort of thing. So it was really interesting to think about that. And I don't know whether you guys thought about like birth order and personality and that. And how you felt that played out.
Yeah, I was okay with that side of things. I think I was mostly frustrated by the fact that even after Juniper and Belle had figured out that there was misunderstandings happening, there was not like, oh, maybe we should all talk about these misunderstandings and get out. Like I was just like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, that annoyed me too for a while. I'm like, just sit down and work it out, please.
Come on, this is kind of.
To be fair, I get like that with a lot of books where I'm like, just use your words, talk to one another.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
But like on the other hand, that it's not exactly like they had good role models in that sense, so I can understand why they didn't.
Oh, no, I completely understand, but like, yes, I get that I've had that in books before where I've just been like, if you just used your words and talked to the other person, there would be a solution to this problem that would not be so difficult. But I mean, I suppose that's the whole point. Like, they need to have a difficult problem to have a long solution. Like, that's what the whole story is for.
Yeah.
But it's still very frustrating. Just be like, if you just use your words and said to the other person, hey, this is what's going on, you would have an answer. Oh my God.
I feel your frustration and know exactly it. Like, it's exactly the kind of things I was doing. I was just like, ah!
I think of all of them, Agnes was the one that annoyed me the most.
Oh yeah.
You want to talk about that, Mel?
Oh, for someone who is like, oh, but usually I care about everyone, but I'm hardening my heart. She seemed to have an awful easy time being very hard to everybody.
Yeah, there was a lot of her being like, no, I've got to keep my circle closed. I'm like, but you grew up with two sisters. Like, surely you want someone in your life to rely on. Like, I understand not wanting to rely on a man because, that guy came and you thought he, told on you for having sex or whatever, but like, you need to have someone in your life, someone that you can trust.
Yeah. And I just in general found her personality very, very abrasive.
Yes.
Like, I found Juniper quite abrasive as well, but in a more I don't know, she's young and she hasn't lost and that sort of thing. And so I was like, I can see this being, a diamond that needs a bit of helping and over time and things on those lines. Whereas with Agnes, it was just sort of like, God, woman. Whereas Bella was about the only one that I could even sort of say vaguely that I liked, but also I kind of kept getting frustrated with her as well. Sorry, I really did not ever actually get attached to any of them. So I was just like constantly sort of a bit cranky at them. I was like, I don't know, for girls who were apparently quite close to each other, it took an awful long time for them to even figure out stuff and manage to talk to each other. And like, even after Juniper started living with Bella, I was like, okay, I still can't find an appreciation for each other here. No, just really kind of cranky with each other still. Okay. I don't know. I only have a sister, and I don't know. I can't imagine not talking. Like, even if we're angry at each other, eventually, especially when you spend that much time around each other, when you're angry, you end up talking because you kind of have to. There might be yelling involved, but you end up talking.
Yeah, I thought it was. Sorry, you go.
No, that's right. You go.
I was just going to say, I thought it was interesting, though, that the dad deliberately drove a wedge between the sisters because he knew that they were stronger together, and he was afraid of them, and he knew that the way to basically get around them was to drive them apart from each other.
Yeah, and he was right. But like,
not that it helped him in the end. Like, Juniper still killed his butt.
I just felt like it was almost a little bit too easy for him to do it. Like, you lived with your father, you know what kind of dude he is, and you never thought that maybe you should talk to each other at some point. Like, even if you left angry and you were just like really, really angry about it all, I just feel like with the amount of time that passed, you'd think, okay, well, maybe we should.
To be fair, the big misunderstanding didn't really happen because their daddy lied to them. It was because the boy that Agnes slept with came and told their father that they slept together. And then when he went to go attack Agnes, Agnes told her dad that her sister had been sleeping with a girl in the church.
Yeah, no, it's because Agnes jumped to conclusions.
But the dad also was the one that let Juniper believe that the other girls had run away, and didn't let her know that he basically kicked them out. And he also hid the letters from her. So he was definitely trying to keep Juniper away from the other girls, if nothing else.
Yeah, no, definitely. But like, he wasn't the only actor in the sort of separation of them. Like, Agnes assumed that Bella had told their father when it wasn't Bella, it was the boy. So Agnes told on Bella that Bella had been with a girl, and that's what caused the whole, like, everyone just kind of like assumed things instead of using your goddamn words.
Well, I think that's actually probably one of the major reasons why I could never even really get on board with Agnes, is because I mean, that's a pretty big assumption to just jump to without anybody saying so, from your sister who you love and trust, to just go, oh, she did it to me. I was like, because she's standing there, she did it?
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, why would she have thought the boy would come over? Like,
well, to be fair, she hadn't told the boy she was pregnant. She'd only told Agnes. That was the only person she'd told. The boy only knew about it because he spied on her when she was in the forest, and like, he only knew because of he had, like, she hadn't actually told him that she was pregnant.
Yeah, I know. But
so like, that was why she thought that was, because it was like literally only one person she'd ever told.
I know, so, but well, there wasn't the only one person she told. She'd also told her grandmother, who gave her the herbs.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, you know, I'm like, as soon as you get sort of go, oh, there is actually one more. It's like your stories of you know, this is the only person who could have told, sort of starts to feel a little bit looser now, and maybe you should just talk. But, you know, I'm also a 42-year-old woman and not a young girl, and
that's true. Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, she would have been mid to late teens at the time. Like, I understand that as a mid to late teenager, an abusive father coming towards you looking to attack you,
Mm.
you would look for anything to protect yourself, even if that means throwing someone that you love under the bus,
Mhm.
because
But
you do it
it's-
without thinking.
The
'Cause-
thing is, though, that it's a sign of her character overall, and she acts in the same way through like a lot of the beginning of the story, at least.
Yeah.
She acted selfishly in a lot of the story.
Yeah.
And I think the only thing that actually stopped her from only thinking of herself was becoming a mum and having, and then it was really only
It's all
worrying
about a
about the
daughter.
baby.
Yeah.
Although then when she went, just goes, here, come and look after the baby, I was like, you fucking idiot. Like when she took the baby to the other girls and like that was the brothel girls, wasn't it? That she took the baby to, and she was like, I have to go and do this thing. I was like, what do you think is going to happen? Like,
Yeah.
I was so angry with her. I was like, this was a bad idea. What did you guys think of her relationship with what's his name? I can't remember his name. The guy who was the
August?
union guy.
the lead?
August, yeah.
Yeah, August. I don't know. I liked him.
Yeah, I liked him too.
I had a couple of thoughts. One is not really about August so much, but like there's a point where I don't know, I think it's the sisters were like, oh my gosh, she's always had such terrible taste in guys. And I'm like, oh yeah, I've been there with a friend of mine. Yep. Always just picked the worst possible person.
Mm.
So,
It
but
also
you know,
felt like-
go ahead,
Sorry.
Naomi.
I was just going to say, it also just felt like the boys were always fawning over her. I'm like, what, does she have beer-flavored nipples or something? Like,
Yes.
like every time there was a boy that could even be remotely interested in her, they were suddenly like, why, hello there.
It was a bit overdone.
Like every single male character that could have been interested in her, like the boy that got her pregnant chased her down and tried to marry her and was all like, oh, I'm so in love with you. And it just felt very like, I don't know, it just felt very, you know, why is everyone so in love with her if she's such an awful person? But she seems like she's trying really hard to be an awful person.
And I also felt like it was sort of, I get that Bella's a lesbian, but where are the guys who were possibly even vaguely looking at her? Like it just was a bit too off balanced.
Well, there was one at least.
Was there? I don't remember that.
Yeah, the library guy.
Oh, of course, yes.
And he was really nice. I really liked him.
Yeah.
And I liked that he was like, he really liked her, but when he realized that she was not that way inclined, he wasn't, like in comparison to that other guy that got what's-her-face pregnant, who went from, I love you and I want to marry you, to I want you to die. Like he went so horrible because he wasn't getting what he wanted. Whereas the library guy, I can't remember anybody's names. He was really accepting of it and was like, yeah, okay, I get it, you know.
Yeah, he was just very like, oh, okay, so you're not interested in me, that's cool, let me still help you with all your stuff. Like,
yeah,
he still wanted to be involved and be friends with her, even like he didn't get all boy butthurt.
Yeah.
Which I was kind of expecting, and then that didn't happen, so that was nice.
And relatedly, I like that August was still on board, like interested in Agnes, even though she proves to be powerful, dangerous, all of these things. Like he's not put off by that. He's not like he's not, well, he might be a bit afraid, but he's not like fearful or like lashing out because of that.
And he wasn't bothered by the fact that she was pregnant by somebody else.
Yeah.
Go for that.
And he also like went and basically risked himself to save Eve and like planted the clay baby.
Yeah.
Like that really showed me that he was
Committed.
not just interested in her because she was pretty or whatever. Like he, for some reason, thought she was a good person. She
But
really
also that
show
he
it
was-
until the very end, but
also that he was prepared to act like a father for her.
yes. And that he was willing, even if she wasn't interested in him, like he wasn't doing it as a, you know, I'm doing this for you so that you love me kind of thing. Like he was very like, he wasn't expecting anything, which was nice.
Yeah.
I was worried at the beginning that he was going to turn out to be the traitor when especially when they made the point of getting him to sign in the book. And I was like, maybe it doesn't work the same way. The magic, that whatever magic was that was stopping someone from telling, I thought maybe it doesn't work the same on men and he's the one that's told. And I was so relieved when it wasn't him.
Yeah, I was worried it was going to be him or the guy from the library or like that, or Jenny Lynn, is that her name?
Jenny, yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
I
was very worried about her.
Yeah.
I was like, she's going to be the traitor and it's going to make me real sad. And then her secret was just that she was trans and she was not the traitor. It was great.
And it wasn't anyone that was the traitor. It was the dude with the weird shadows that were like,
yeah, like there wasn't any traitor.
I liked that, and I liked that it wasn't anyone, and I liked that kind of idea of that. That's how people in power can break up, you know, these sorts of resistances, is by turning them against each other. And that was really, I thought, really good too.
Yeah, like in a dark book, I appreciated that she didn't pull the rug out from under us like that.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else that anyone else would like to talk about? I feel like we all felt fairly similar, other than Mel that didn't really gel with the book. Like I feel like we all felt very similar about the book as a whole. You know, while none of us really loved the book, we didn't really hate it either when it was a good story, even if we didn't love the story.
I enjoyed, and maybe enjoyed is not the right word. I wanted to keep reading it and I cared about finding out what was going to happen, but I wouldn't read it again because it was like too dark and it was like not fun, you know.
Yeah,
and I think
I agree.
I think that's what'll keep me from rereading it as well. Like I feel like I would probably enjoy it more if I read it A, in a different format, and B, when I was in a better mood in general. But I think the darkness of it is probably going to in the end kill my ability to do a reread, because I can't, I already know the basic story. So
like it's interesting. Like it's kind of like it's a book written very much in this time, but because it is written very much in this time, it's difficult to come back to.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. Like it was an interesting read, and I think there is a lot to unpack there, but yeah, it was tiring.
Yes, I don't know that I would want to read it again. Like it's not the kind of book that I would reread, which makes me glad that I didn't buy a physical copy, even though the physical copy is beautiful. I'm trying to only keep books on my shelf that I'm actually going to reread. Like I don't want to have books on my shelf just because they're pretty. I'm trying really hard to do that.
I respect you for that, Naomi.
I agree with you though, Naomi, because I'm exactly the same.
That apply to ebooks. I can have whatever ebooks I want, but like for physical books, I want to try and only buy physical books that I know that I'm going to reread. And that was part of the reason I only bought this electronically, was because I thought the story was going to be really interesting, but I wasn't 100% sold on it. So
I admit that I'm like, I had it pre-ordered for the soft cover when it comes out, which is not until next month. And I cancelled it when we picked it because I really wasn't sure I would do it a reread. And I always figure I could go back and buy it if I decided to. And I'm kind of glad now because I'm like, I didn't need it actually on my shelf.
Yes, the cover's very pretty for something that's quite a dark story.
Yeah, that was the thing. Like the cover looked very bright and light. So I didn't expect the story to be quite so heavy and dark.
I think it's dark when you, I've got to open it up and have a look again, but I feel like it's darker when you look at it. It's like pretty on the surface, if I remember, but I could be
Well,
wrong.
that's probably fitting then. In the same way that, like, you know, when they went to the old town that, you know, and they went to the witch museum and they found the tapestry with the hidden spell, you know, that whole, it's just on the surface, it's just a embroidery, and it's more to it under the surface. I feel like the cover's probably like that, because I did the audiobook, I didn't really look at the cover very closely, but that would be kind of cool if the cover has more to it than first meets the eye.
It's one of those ones that's, you know, like it's got a snake, like it's a red snake over here, and it's got like the roots sort of crawling down on the bottom, so it's got pretty elements to it, but then when you sort of look at it, like some of these flowers over here are kind of rotting or something. I'm not quite sure what's going on with them. They might not be, they might be just brown, I'm not sure, but yeah, maybe that's what a juniper looks like. Maybe that's the things that are going on.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know what the flowers they talk. I know what amaranth looks like, but I don't know what the others look like. Not what juniper would taste like when it's in gin.
But
tell you what the
Berries are
plant looks
usually
like.
bluish.
I know the berries are small.
Yeah, and I think the berries tend to be bluish.
Yes.
Oh, okay, they're here in the corner then.
Yeah, that's right.
And I know that belladonna is a dark flower.
Well, that's probably purple. There's some red flowers down the bottom.
I think that's the amaranth.
That's the amaranth, yeah.
No, belladonna is, I think, like a dark purpley color, I think.
Well, these flowers look like they could be purple. It looks more brown to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like a dark, depending on the strain of belladonna, they're either a dark purple or a black. There are some white ones, but most of them are a dark purple or a black sort of color.
Yeah, so it looks like this is it's less about it being dark so much as it's the different the representation of the girls and things like that.
Which is very clever.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, basically I'm refusing to rate the book because I don't feel like I can give it an honest rating right now.
I've just given up on rating books altogether because they're too, like, for that reason, because I found that I look back on my ratings and go, oh, what was I thinking when I rated that? Because it really is very much dependent on my mood at the time and what I was in the mood for reading. So I'm not doing it anymore. I'm just going to mark that I've read them. I'm not going to actually give them a rating.
I kind of like doing
for tonight.
Yes, sorry. Anybody else got anything else before? Cool. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. And if you'd like to join us next month, we will be reading The Relentless Moon by Mary Robinette Cowell. So we'd love to see you then. Bye.